Welcome everybody back into NerdSesh. As always, I'm Carson Breber and alongside me is Logan Camden. And today we are going to be ranking the top 10 players we would most want to start a franchise with today. And Logan, I presume I speak for both of us when I say Jimmy Butler's got to be number one on this list, yeah?
Yeah, of course, man. He's not problematic at all off the court. Yeah, I don't know, dude. Him and Pat Riley are kind of at like a stalemate right now, dude. Who's going to blink first? I honestly think it's probably in the Heat's best interest to just go ahead and trade the guy, but what do I know, man?
Well, I definitely think that they should try to trade him because he just can't find his joy on the court, Logan, and how sad is that? But I think the reality is he's going to be a pretty exceptionally difficult star to trade when you consider 35 availability
Especially
concerns.
the money, too.
Not the easiest fit necessarily for a lot of these contenders, and he's expecting an extension. There's honestly not really a target that I love out there. We've talked about that before, but I think it's going to be hard to trade him.
I've been a big Jimmy Butler fan for a while, too, dude. I'm going to be honest, I wouldn't pay him. And I don't know if I'm just like, it's a little bit different from the Paul George situation because we were talking about that last night, through text. Like, I would have bid on the Paul George contract. I don't know. I think you got to like take a step back when you're paying these older guys, man. Who,
Totally.
The end could be coming soon. And it's not like Jimmy's been lighting the world on fire now. I
No.
don't think he's as intriguing of an asset as he would have been, maybe a year ago or even earlier this season, dude.
I totally agree. But speaking of intriguing assets, those are the guys who we're talking about today. I think this is going to be a really fun episode. The reason that I thought of this is we have back-to-back Jokic-Wemby matchups these next 2 days, which I am unbelievably excited for. And you just have sort of that intergenerational duel of the absolute best that the league's got. And so today we're going to be balancing that. We're going to be balancing how great are these guys right now? How great do we expect them to be going forward? Do you want to shout out any honorable mentions now, Logan, or do you want to save that for after we go through our top 10?
Dude, I'm just hoping my list is not a complete and utter abomination.
Don't even say that. Plus, you're sick. Clearly, you're under the weather. You have the black lungs, so it's your flu game.
I mean, I don't know if I'm thinking clearly right now. So I say we do honorable mentions at the end.
All right. Well, we'll start from the bottom. Who do you have in your 10 spot?
All right. To be completely transparent here, I decided this right before we began. And I think I like this. I have Jalen Brunson in my 10 spot. And, I debated taking a really young guy that I think is going to pan out. Maybe another younger point guard that's a real great offensive engine, like a Trae Young or something like that. Even a young wing, like I thought maybe a Jalen Williams, a Franz Wagner, a Brandon Miller, But Brunson's not that old. Brunson's 28 years old, and he's one of those guys that I think I just know what I'm getting with Brunson. He's such a sure thing right now. He's going to lead out a great offense. He's going to be a great playoff performer. I think his game really scales well to the playoffs. And like I said, he's 28, but his game isn't really predicated on athleticism. And so, this isn't the best comparison, but it's like I think Steph Curry's game is going to age really gracefully because he's the greatest shooter of all time. I think Brunson's game is going to age really gracefully because he's so methodical. And, I just think he's a really good offensive player. So I debated going with somebody really young that I think is going to pan out and be a star, but I think I prefer what Brunson brings me right now. That being said, I don't know if he's a number one on a championship team, and that was kind of
An offensive number one or the best overall player? Because
I
I think he can definitely be the number
so?
one on a championship offense. I just think he needs a really awesome number two and a really good supporting cast.
I mean, he's got that now. But
I
really...
And they're totally a championship offense. The question is just, are they a championship defense?
I love what he brings to the table. I don't think that he's going to fall off a cliff anytime soon. I think Brunson's a guy that I expect 5+ really great more years out of him. The guy's so damn efficient. He's so good at setting up his teammates for looks, and he's just so methodical, man. That's my favorite thing about Jalen Brunson. So, when we started doing this, I thought that my list was all going to be guys who were like, 25 and younger, but Brunson sneaks his way on here.
I totally see the case, dude. He's just such a sure thing and such a certifiably elite offensive engine, especially as a floor raiser. What we saw last year where he improved that Knicks offense by 15 points per 100 possessions, the volume load that we saw him carry in the playoffs, he is in such complete control of the game, and now we've seen him with more talent around him scale up his playmaking, improve his scoring efficiency, and still have a really impressive offensive season. So I can see the case of just, I want that offensive number one anchor that I can bet on year after year. But in my number 10 spot, I do have a guy who is a good bit younger and who is an incredible defensive anchor with some real offensive potential. I hope this guy is on your list. Maybe he's higher. I have Evan Mobley in my 10th spot. There's not a bigger Evan Mobley guy on the planet. I mean, when he was a draft prospect, I said he was the best guy that I'd been able to evaluate. He was later surpassed by both Chet and Wemby, who are just absolute freak talents. But I did think that Mobley was the best prospect that we'd seen in more than a half decade. And this is the year in which we've really started to see that potential realized. The guy is 23 years old. He is a top 3 defender on the planet. And he's averaging 18.5 points, 9 boards, 3 assists a night on 65% true shooting in just 30 minutes per game because the Cavs blow everybody out so much. And it's really the offensive versatility that we've seen blossom with him and the offensive aggression. But this is a guy who is now comfortable running pick and roll for you. He's a 64th percentile creator there. He's one of the better transition players in basketball with his ability to grab and go at his size as a really good athlete who does have good passing vision. He's shooting 43% from deep on 2.5 attempts per game now. That's a meaningful difference from him. Not a high volume 3-point shooter, of course, but comfortable stepping out beyond the 3-point line, knocking down open shots in a way that we haven't seen from him previously. He can handle, he can pass, he can attack off the bounce. He looks more confident attacking off the catch. If he's catching the ball around the nail, if he is initiating off the bounce, like in every way, he's just more confident and he's more of an offensive weapon. But it is the defensive foundation that makes him a guy who I think is clearly going to have all NBA value down the line and is already pretty close to that because he's a tier 1 rim protector. He holds opposing players 13% below their average field goal percentage at the rim. And at the same time, he's one of the most switchable bigs in basketball. We saw it in the playoff run last year where he's guarding Paolo Banchero and Jayson Tatum as their primary defenders for extended stretches, and he's holding both those guys to like 35% shooting from the field. It's incredible his ability to stay in front of wings, to move his feet out in space, and then also be this unbelievable rim protecting force who can dominate at the 4 and the 5. We've seen him thrive playing alongside Jared Allen. Defensively, he can dominate both at the 4 and the 5, but offensively, now that he's got more perimeter skill, he can do the same. But I do think he will still truly be unleashed when he is more of a full-time 5 someday. He plays half his minutes at the 5 as is because the Cavs have a very nice minute stagger with him and Allen. But I just think that's when you'll see him in the best offensive situation because, yes, he can still do his stuff spacing the floor and can be part of a 5-out offense, but he also is going to get a significant majority of all those big man touches around the rim. And that's where we really saw him thrive offensively in the playoff series against Boston last year. And he's improved a good bit since then, but just that sort of spacing, it's a benefit to any player offensively. And defensively, I just have no question that he can anchor the 5, right? He can do it on the glass. He, to me, is physical enough. These were the questions about him early in his career. But here's the crazy number for you, Logan. The Cavs' defensive rating with Mobley on the floor and Jared Allen off, that is Mobley at the 5, and we've seen 460 minutes of that this year. They have a 101.6
That's insane.
Defensive rating.
That's ridiculous.
It's better than the Thunder, so I just have no doubts that he is one of the absolute top-tier defensive centers and power forwards in the league, but I think you get more out of him offensively if he's at your center and you can put more offensive skill around him. So he's just one of those special defensive anchors who's going to be one of the best guys of this generation, was one of the best prospects of this generation defensively, and he's a really good offensive player, and I think he's just going to keep getting better offensively because the guy's 23, and we've seen Kenny Atkinson instill a confidence in him, be willing to utilize him in different ways, empower him to do more with the ball in his hands, and he doesn't have like Chet Holmgren level skill, right? He's not that level ball handler. He's not that level shooter. So he's not just going to keep growing exponentially forever, but can he continue to get better as an offensive player? Absolutely. And I expect him to. So he's just got to be on my list. Man, it's so rare to find a player this great defensively who's even good offensively. And Mobley is already that, and I just think he's going to keep trending upwards.
I completely agree. That's why he's on my list. I have him in my 8th spot. And
Nice.
the only edge I would give Mobley over Chet right now is I do think he's a little bit better on the interior, like, as a play finisher with a little more physicality.
Interesting.
I mean,
I don't agree with that. I think that Chet is the better finisher. I do think that Mobley is just more strongly built, but Chet is also really down to play physical basketball, and he is really aggressive. I would say Mobley's edge is, I think he's significantly better defending big wings, like in the Tatum Paolo archetype. Like, Chet is
he's
switchable,
sturdy.
but he can't
He's
do
sturdy.
that. Mobley is sturdier, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, I'm honestly surprised Mobley isn't higher than this for you because I do see him continuing to get better offensively. I think this is a guy that could average, maybe in a different offensive situation, just because there are a lot of mouths to feed in Cleveland. I think this is a guy that in a lot of situations could give you 22 a night really efficiently and be the best defensive player on the floor. And that is why he's here for me. I think Evan Mobley could be the best defensive player on the planet for the next decade outside of, Wemby, right?
I was gonna say.
I mean, well, he's just one of one. There's nothing that really truly compares to Wemby, but the next guy to me is Mobley. And that's no disrespect to Chet. I think Chet's great on that end too, but as you mentioned, I think with his versatility, there's a little more. That stat is ridiculous, Carson. That is
Insane.
eye-opening. I mean, that's like, dude, 2004 basketball defense, but in 2025.
And Jarrett Allen is really, really good. And I think it's a great thing that they can get 48 minutes of quality center play, right? You get 16 minutes of them together. You get 16 minutes of Mobley. You get 16 minutes of Allen out there by themselves. That works. But again, I do think the absolute best version of Evan Mobley comes with him playing center for you. That's not to say that they have to move off of Allen because they have such a great thing going. But that is my opinion for Mobley's individual ceiling. Okay, so who's in your 9 spot then?
This was probably the toughest guy for me to rank on my list because I think he's way better right now than this number would indicate. At number 9, I have Giannis, and Giannis is, in my opinion, the second best player on the planet, arguably. I would have Jokic, and then I would have Giannis, and then I would have SGA. I think it's really close between all those three, so take your pick. But this is the best offensive version I think we've ever seen of Giannis. For so long was called Run and Dunk Man, and now has legitimately grown his game out, right? Giannis is a legitimately really good playmaker now, where he collapses defenses and makes these kick-out passes that he just wasn't capable of before. He's expanded, to a mid-range game now, and he's not as impactful as he was defensively, but he's still really good there. And I think the Bucks have figured out combinations around him where Giannis isn't trying to be a one-man defense anymore. I think they figured out role players, guys like A.J. Green and Andre Jackson Jr., who can come in and do their job. And I think Giannis is going to be among, the best players on the planet for the next 3 to 5 years. So you might be asking, why is he at number 9? The only reason is because of my just injury concerns with Giannis. Because he's missed the last 2 postseasons, because he hasn't been available. And I don't know. I just worry about his play style and him being able to stay healthy. And I don't know if that's the best way to think about it, but I worry about Giannis. I worry about him if, like, for example, if Giannis had a back injury or, had a leg injury or something along those lines. And I just worry about him being able to continue playing the way he does after something like that. And I don't want to wish that on him. I hope Giannis stays healthy. But that is my one chief concern with Giannis, and that is the only thing that is really key. And his age, too. I don't want to act like...
Sure.
Obviously, it's his age, too. He's past 30. That doesn't factor in as much as his injury concerns. So I think Giannis wholeheartedly has a case to be much, much higher on this list, but I am going to put him down here at number 9.
This is very low for Giannis, in my opinion. And I understand factoring in age and some of the health concerns, how his game will age, being so dependent on athleticism. But to me, those only really become factors once we're getting into a higher tier. Once we're getting to dudes who can at least sniff something close to Giannis's peak. Because that's the thing. This is a top 15 peak in NBA history that we're witnessing right now from Giannis with his offensive growth. I mean, yeah, the guy's 30 years old, but he's averaging 32, 12, and 6 on over 62% true shooting. And no, isn't the defensive force he was at his peak. But over the last month, as Milwaukee has turned their defense around, he has been quite good defensively and has been better than we've seen him over the past couple years. So he's just in that special all-time great tier where if the rosters are equal, like I would take 3 to 4 more years of peak Giannis over a decade plus of Evan Mobley, over a decade plus of basically all the guys who I have below him. Yeah, man, I just think Giannis has an ability to will you through if you put the right roster around him. That as much as I love Evan Mobley, right? Obviously, he does not have anything close to Giannis's offensive ceiling. Some of the other dudes in my 9 spot, Paolo Banchero, I think has the potential to be an elite offensive player. He's never going to be close to the two-way force that Giannis Antetokounmpo is, man. Like, I really think it's only Jokic having a top 8 peak in NBA history that kind of overshadows the fact that Giannis is also at this true all-time great Titan level. And some of the availability stuff with him, I can't write it off, but it also is worth noting that, like, he's still been pretty healthy in regular seasons. It's just been the last 2 postseasons.
Yeah, it's literally just been the playoffs.
Which is unfortunate, which can't be disregarded. But do I view him as, like, an overly injury-prone player? No, I don't. I honestly think that the guy is a tank, and I think he's one of the great regular season floor raisers we've seen in the history of this sport. Like, he has basically been an automatic 50-plus wins for the Bucks going all the way back to 2019, and I don't think he's ever been better than he is right now. So he's a good bit higher than this for me.
I understand that. Yeah, I don't know, and that's what I think makes this list probably interesting. Just how much do you value the future? I just look at Mobley and some of these guys higher than Giannis as, and not that Giannis isn't, but like foundation guys that are going to be great for a decade. And I don't know how much Giannis has left in the tank. Maybe I'm a little too worried about his injuries, but that does factor into me. And I'm so confident in some of the young guys above him really being great. Obviously, I agree with what you said. I don't think they're ever going to reach the level that Giannis is at right now. It is truly historic, but I think they're going to be really, really consistent and dependable for the next decade. So that's why he's down here.
I just think Mobley at his best is like fringe top 10 kind of player. Paolo Banchero at his best, I think, sneaks inside the top 10. Giannis is top 2. And again, there are some times throughout NBA history in which he would be number 1 playing at this level. That's just such a special thing. It gives you such a good chance every year that all of those years are so extremely valuable to me. At number 9, though, as I said, I do have Paolo Banchero, and he's a tricky fella to rank. And I did consider Mobley above him because I know what I'm getting from Mobley as an elite defensive anchor every single year of his career. And Paolo, in some ways, I think still has a ceiling that isn't as fully laid out and plain to see as it is with Mobley. But I was really impressed by what we saw with Paolo early in this year. And it was only 5 games, but basically every adjustment that I wanted to see from him last year, we saw. He was maximizing his physical advantages. He was playing elite bully ball. This is a 6'10", 250 tank of a man who, yes, is very skilled for being that size, but is clearly at his best when he is just relentlessly bullying you. And that's what he was doing. He was getting to the line 12 times a game this year. He was shooting 57% on 2-pointers versus, I think, 49% last year. 34% of his shots were coming inside of 3 feet compared to 22% last year. He was aggressively attacking guys out of the post more. He was just going through people. And that's what makes Paolo special, because I think he'll end up being a good jump shooter. Right now, he's an okay jump shooter. The efficiency isn't great. The degree of difficulty is high, but the fewer long mid-range attempts that we see from Paolo and the more getting to the rim, getting to the line that we see, that's when he can become a legitimately really efficient offensive player, because efficiency was a big struggle for him through his first 2 years. The situation was tough, but part of it was also just his own shot selection favoring some of those lower percentage looks. So I really love what I saw from him as a scorer early this year. And I think he can be an elite playmaking forward. And that's what makes me so high on Paolo, because I've seen some people really dismiss Paolo as being like an actual future elite player. And I've seen people compare him to Melo. That's crazy to me because the playmaking is so different, right? This is a guy who can average 6 assists a game for you right now, who can see so much at his size, who can make these impressive skip passes at times and can make these wraparound passes and laydowns when he's attacking the basket. And the more shooting you put around him, the more of those kick out passes you're going to get, the more playmaking value you're going to get from him. That's where I see him being an actual offensive engine, not an elite playmaker, period, right? Because there are guards who are just going to be on a different level from him. But in terms of forwards, I think he can be one of the best passers in the league. And I think the Paolo discourse is just kind of weird, man, because as I mentioned, you have the detractors who I think really are looking at Paolo and saying he's overrated right now. And we talked about this last year, right? The Magic statistically were way better with him off the floor. He was extremely inefficient. The reason that was such a good team is because they were such an elite team defense. And then this year, we saw how successful they were with Franz in the volume that he was able to produce in Paolo's absence. And then we've seen, even without both of those guys, their ability to be a competitive basketball team. I think that that has been good in terms of illuminating what is this team's superpower, and it is that incredible team defense. But I also don't think we should be judging Paolo right now as though he's a finished product and say, oh, well, he's inefficient right now. He's not a high-end offensive number one right now. Well, yeah, he's in year 3. We shouldn't expect him to be that. And so going forward, I think the more bully ball he plays, the more he grows as a passer, the more I see him as one of those truly elite offensive players, offensive forwards. Defensively, I think he's quite mediocre right now, and I think that that will probably remain the case. But I also think as his offensive situation gets better, and I think it is better this year compared to years past, and I'm excited to see him back out there healthy again, his efficiency numbers will continue to look better. So, again, I love Mobley. I considered Mobley, but it is the fact that I see that actual offensive number one ceiling for Paolo that makes me lean towards him.
I agree with a lot of what you said, and have been impressed by the Magic in this stretch without him, and I think you see the depth on display for them. Batadze stepping up with all these other guys, like if it's Tristan da Silva, if it's Anthony Black, like this is a really good team top to bottom, but I honestly feel like that kind of narrative is old news. I know it was just a year ago, but I really think, and it's a small sample size.
That's what's hard.
I really think Paolo showed you what he's going to be capable of at his apex, and I hope he comes back 100%. Injuries are always hard to come back from, but, I mean, I just think you're looking at a guy who's going to be a freight train going to the basket, who's going to be a really good playmaker out of it. And the one thing I disagree with you, I know we've disagreed on this before, I do think Paolo is going to be an elite jump shooter of the basketball one day. I think that
elite is very ambitious to me.
Would you consider Jayson Tatum an elite shooter?
No. I would consider him a very good shooter.
Then maybe not elite. I think that Banchero could be on like a Jayson Tatum level of jump shooter. And I mean, if you're looking at that dude, a guy who can get to the rim at will, who can draw a ton of defensive attention inside, a guy that can draw a bunch of fouls, that can finish through big bodies. I mean, I'm never going to forget. That Pacers game is ingrained in my brain. That was insane. A grown man dominating the other team. And I think that is much more of what Paolo is going to look like when he's a finished product. And I don't think there's going to be a hole in him, in his game offensively. I think he's going to be a complete beast. I don't think he has as much two-way value as some of these other guys, but I have Paolo in my 6th spot, and it is because I'm so confident in him being a really good offensive player one day. So, I think Paolo deserves to be here. And I think the Melo comp is honestly pretty disingenuous to Paolo's game. Like, maybe in like his first 2 years, I could buy that just with like the shot diet and how much he was settling, but I just think that there's a different level of physicality.
Yeah, man. I mean, Melo was never 6'10", 250.
Yeah.
It's pretty simple. He could play real bully ball in New York, but he was also sacrificing some athleticism and quickness as he added that bulk. Like
Melo was never passing the rock.
Well, that's the big thing. That's the really big difference to me. I do think Paolo is a very good playmaker and is going to continue to improve.
And I think there's potential for Paolo to be a good defender. I think that he's
Yeah.
not right now. Like, the Magic have been statistically better without him on the floor defensively, but I think there's an avenue to him being a good defender.
The thing for me is I always give young players the benefit of the doubt that they will improve defensively. But if there were ever a situation where you would be bought in defensively, wouldn't it be Orlando, right? Where you have a bunch of young dudes around you, but everybody's defending their asses off. And I get it. He's got a real offensive load on him, but he's been unimpressive on that end. He's been a weak link, if you could say that, for Orlando. They don't really have a weak link, but he's been the least impressive defender on the floor for them usually. And I think a lot of people will look at last year's postseason and say, oh my God, well, that sold you on Paolo. To me, the 5 games that we saw this year actually matter more because of the way that he was producing. Last year, what he did in a really disgusting playoff environment was wildly impressive, but a lot of it was total outlier pull-up shooting, right? I mean, he was 40% from deep. I think he was like 54% from mid-range when he was under 40% in the regular season. Insane, sick that he did that, but not sustainable. If he plays like the guy that we saw early this year, that is sustainable, and that's really, really scary. So you have Mobley in your 8th spot. What would you like to add about him?
I don't have a ton to add. I mean, I just know that he's going to be a stud defensively for a long time, and that's why I want Mobley.
Okay. Well, in my number 8 spot, I have a guy who is also going to be a stud defensively, to say the least, but does have a good bit more offensive potential, and that is Chet Holmgren. I feel like maybe you are going to have young guys higher on this list than I do.
I think so too. Well, because I'm looking at this now, and there's just I have Chet at 7, so
interesting. Very
I think
interesting.
this is interesting.
I wonder where we are going to disagree, but I say nobody's been higher on Evan Mobley. Nobody's been higher on Chet Holmgren. Like, these were my guys. I thought that these guys were clearly the best prospects in their classes, despite the fact that I also loved Cade Cunningham and I loved Paolo Banchero. Chet's 22 years old, and per 36 minutes this year, he's averaging over 22 points per game, 12 rebounds per game, 3 assists, and 3.5 blocks on 62% true shooting. And I believe that he and Wemby and Evan Mobley are the 3 best defensive prospects that I've evaluated. And I think that they're the 3 best defensive prospects since Anthony Davis. And I think that they will be the 3 defining defenders of this generation, which just gives you such a high baseline value. And Chet was the defensive player of the year before he got hurt this year. OKC's defense collectively is incredible. The fact that they are still the number 1 defense, even though they haven't had Chet for so long, is a testament to that. They are freakishly aggressive. They are freakishly athletic. They have more good perimeter defenders than any defense I've ever seen. But when he was on the floor, man, OKC had a 98.6 defensive rating. That's just unfathomable. And players shot 19% below their average at the rim when defended by Chet Holmgren. I do think that in terms of his technical proficiency as a rim protector, he surpasses Wemby, he surpasses Mobley, and he's got more length than Mobley does as well. Just his ability to maintain verticality, his timing as a shot blocker, it's out of this world. His instincts are so far beyond his years. So he's going to be a top 3 defender on the planet for quite some time. And offensively, he's an absolute demon, and he came out with a different mentality this year. His free throw rate skyrocketed. He was attempting 4 free throws per 36 minutes last year. That was up to 7 this year. His aggression as a driver and finisher skyrocketed. He just looked so confident taking dudes off the bounce. He looked so confident attacking the rim, playing off these pocket passes. He doesn't shy away from physicality. His handle for a 7-footer is so good, right? We can talk about Mobley's handle is impressive for his size. Wemby's handle is impressive for his size. Chet is a different level of ball handler from these dudes. His ability to control the ball in traffic, his ability to get low on these drives, like, obviously he's not a perfect ball handler. He's 7 foot, but he has the most actually wing-like ball handling and the jump shooting, man. He's 38% from deep, and at the same time, he shoots 72% in the restricted area and is this incredibly fluid guy, both attacking off the bounce, but also if you feed him off the roll, if you feed him a lob, and he's butter from mid-range. He's just such a complete offensive player. He's an elite roll man, rolling and popping both. He's elite in transition. He can grab and go, but he's also just killer as a trailer with his 3-ball. And he has this real juice off the bounce, and he's a good passer. We talked about last year how effective inverted pick and roll was with Chet, and this year he was better. pre-injury this year, I saw exactly what I wanted from Chet. I saw Chet in attack mode. Yes, I saw skill development, but most importantly, I saw the mentality, because Chet has been gifted so much in terms of basketball ability. But last year, there were times where offensively, he just looked like a rookie, right? And his jump shot went cold at an inopportune time in the playoffs, but also he wasn't that sort of aggressive force who's going to say, hey, I'm a star every night, and you're going to feel that on both ends of the floor. That's what I thought that we saw from the jump this year. And I think he can grow into a guy who is scoring in the mid-20s for you on incredible efficiency and is the perfect complementary offensive player because of his vertical spacing and his floor spacing, his ability to attack in so many different ways, which is just exceptional. And then he's going to be a transformative defender. I've been saying since they drafted Chet, man, that with him and Shai, they have two guys who are going to be MVP caliber players. And that's why I have so much confidence in OKC winning multiple titles. The only reason Chet can't be higher for me is, compared to you, I do think I'm favoring some of these older guys more, just because I think they are in a tier that some of these younger guys I don't see reaching. But it is also health, because if not for health concerns, I would consider him above a couple more dudes. But he has played 92 games in 2.5 seasons. He is very slight, right? I hate to even have to bring it up, but it's a reality when you have a 7-foot-plus guy who weighs 210 pounds. Historically, the track record is concerning. So the two guys I have right above him are just like the pinnacle of durability. And that is an edge when we're talking about, hey, I'm banking my franchise on you. I'm building around you. But in terms of the talent with Chet, I couldn't be higher on him. You have Paolo above him, though.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that, because I disagree.
I mean, I'm just confident that Paolo is going to be way better offensively. I think Paolo is going to be a number one offensively in this league, and I think he could be the best offensive player on a championship team. I don't know if I can say that about Chet. I think Chet can be the best defensive player on a title team. I don't know.
But wouldn't you rather have an absolute defensive superstar who can also give you an efficient 25 a night and is crazy versatile?
That's the balance. I mean, I'd rather have the better offensive player. I mean, I think Chet and Mobley both have an argument above Paolo, factoring that in from two-way value. But I'm so confident that Paolo is going to be one of the best offensive players on the planet.
I pretty strongly disagree. I've been pretty adamant about this since they were prospects. I do think that Paolo is going to be an awesome offensive player too. Do I think he's ever a tier 1 offensive player? No, because I don't think he's going to score with that top tier efficiency or be that top tier playmaker. I think he's going to be really, really good. But then he's an average defender. If you give me a defensive anchor like a Chet Holmgren, who I don't think it's ridiculous to say we will view alongside Rudy Gobert type defender, right? Anthony Davis level defender, when we're talking about the defining guys of a generation, make you a top 3 defense every year. If you put capable personnel around him, and then that guy is also a flat out offensive star with the ceiling I think Chet has, it's really not close to me. It's so rare to find a big with the sort of two-way ability that Chet has, and it is on a different level than Mobley. And that's why Paolo splits the two for me. Mobley, I can see that case of, hey, maybe offensively he's really a number 3 on a title team or as a scorer, but he's a defensive number 1 and is just an awesome all-around basketball player. Chet is like a really good offensive number 2 and is a transformative defensive player. So for me, that's always been a pretty easy call. But okay, you have Chet at 7.
Yeah, I have Chet at 7, Paolo at 6.
Okay. My number 7 is Jayson Tatum. I think that Jayson Tatum is just an incredibly sturdy building block for any NBA team. I think that his availability is an A+, his versatility is the best in the league. And so there's a lot of different ways that you can win in terms of building a team around Jayson Tatum because of that multifaceted impact. And he's having an awesome year. He's averaging 28.5 points, 9.5 boards, 5.5 assists on 61% true shooting. It's incredible. And his value in terms of the fact that you're going to get good stuff from him every night is so reliable. We talk about how compared to other elite offensive players, he's more inconsistent as a scorer, but what he does defensively, what he does on the glass, what he can do as a playmaker, that's what we saw in the finals last year, right? And in the playoffs overall, where he's totally off as a scorer and he's still having this really pronounced impact on every game. And then when he's right, he can go pretty nuclear on you as a scorer. That's why I think he's got to be here. I mean, he's an incredibly safe dude to be building your franchise around. The only reason he's not higher is everybody above him either is a mega offensive force right now or has the potential to be, and I'm betting on them becoming that. And Tatum, as good as he is, and I think he's the 5th best player in basketball right now, he's not that. Like, if you dropped him, for example, in the current OKC offense, which is without Chet Holmgren, I think they'd be like the 18th to 20th best offense in basketball because of the lack of consistent creation, because of the lack of consistent shooting around him. You compare that to an SGA, and these are the conversations that we've been having, people have been having for a long time. SGA has them as the number 7 offense, and when he's on the floor, without Jalen Williams, they play as the best offense in basketball. Like, that's just incredible. I do think, although Tatum's versatility is the best in the league right now, in my opinion, it's still an amazing situation in Boston. Like, when Jayson Tatum is off the floor, man, Boston has a 120 offensive rating. When he is off the floor, they play like the 2nd best offense in basketball. Nobody else has that. That does cover up for some of his inconsistencies in terms of scoring. That does allow him to not have to be like an A-plus advantage creator or an A-plus jump shooter or an A-plus playmaker. It allows him to be a very good offensive player and a very good defensive player and still feel like you can coast to a title because everybody around him is that great. And that's tremendously valuable. It's just when I think about, again, those top tier offensive forces, Jayson Tatum is not one of those dudes. And that's why I have him down at number 7. And he is also a couple years older than a couple of the guys who I have above him.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I forgot about Jayson Tatum.
No!
Yeah.
The Tatum hate. It was in your subconscious.
I literally just forgot about it. He'd probably be 11 for me. I don't know if I'd want him above.
Whoa.
Him and Brunson's interest. I know what Brunson can give me offensively.
Oh my God, Logan. Really? Are we still doing Brunson above Tatum?
Yeah,
I think it's okay to just say you forgot and have him on there.
I forgot
all right.
Jayson Tatum exists.
That's okay. Where would you have him?
Probably 10. I'd have him behind Giannis. I'd sub out Brunson. I'd put Brunson in my 11 spot, and I'd put Tatum in my 10 spot. I just forgot he existed.
I think with how you're valuing younger players, that's fine. It's just I know what I'm getting with Jayson Tatum, and it's a true superstar. And when I look at Paolo, I mean, Paolo's younger, but although I think Paolo can be a better offensive player, he'll never, to me, be the two-way player that Jayson Tatum is. I don't think he'll ever be that sort of all-around player. He won't be that versatile. Mobley, I love the guy, but having a guy who can be an offensive number 1 like Tatum, that's really valuable to me. And then Chet, again, I would have the conversation, but I have 0 questions about Tatum's health. He's an Iron Man, and Chet, I do have questions there.
Yeah, hand up. That's on me, guys.
Right.
I forgot Tatum existed.
Dude, I'm telling you, it's your flu game. It's all right. You get a pass.
Man. So yeah, I'll make that. I'll put Brunson at 11, even though I do like Brunson a lot. I'll put Tatum in my 10th spot.
It's the most wonderful time of the year for getting in on all the hoops, football, and hockey action at DraftKings Sportsbook. In the season of giving, we're being gifted college football and basketball, pro football and basketball, and pro hockey too, almost 24/7.
So many games every day, so many opportunities to place your first bet. Try betting on something simple like picking a team to win. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app and place your bet. And here's a gift for all new customers. Bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins.
Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code NERDS. That's code NERDS for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins when you bet just $5. Happy holidays from DraftKings. The crown is yours. Okay, so you have Paolo 6.
I do.
I guess I'll just keep rolling here. I have Anthony Edwards at number 6. And I expect that you'll have him, I don't know how much higher, but higher because you're a super big Ant guy. I've been seeing some Ant versus Tatum discourse on the timeline today. And I want to be clear. I unequivocally think that Jayson Tatum is a good bit better than Anthony Edwards right
100%.
now. I really don't think it's close because of the maturity that I get from Tatum as a playmaker, because of the defensive impact. But Ant is 3 years younger, and I do think that he has a sort of special athletic ceiling that he can continue to grow into. And I'm seeing a lot of panic about him today because last night was really rough and he's had a couple of clunkers as of late. And on the year, he's at 24.5 points per game on 57% true shooting. And I do think there's stuff that he needs to do better. Like the spacing in Minnesota sucks. There's no two ways about that. But he still has to get to the rim more than he is. 15% of his attempts coming inside of 3 feet. That is unacceptable for an athlete the caliber of Ant. When you think about his first step, when you think about his strength, when you think about his aerial ability as a finisher, he has to just will his way to the rim more, even though it is hard in this situation. 3.8 free throws attempt per game. Way too low for an athletic freak like Anthony Edwards. 47% shooting on 2-pointers. All of those are unacceptable numbers. But I do think in another situation, he just would be getting to the rim more. And he is a ridiculously good finisher. His ability to finish in traffic because of all his A-plus athletic traits is in the top tier in the league today. And I also think you got to treat him like a 23-year-old, man. And I get it. He has been on some really good teams. And so we have that expectation that he is a superstar, and he's been treated like that by the media. People want him to be basically the face of the league. And so he's held to a standard that is maybe beyond his years and beyond where he's actually at as a basketball player. But I do think as the situation improves, as he ages, we will see him rounding into his prime as the sort of unstoppable downhill force that he's capable of being. And now, this year, he is shooting 41% from deep on 10 attempts per game. And you can say, oh, well, he's settling too much. Okay, but part of that is situation. He can find the right balance between attacking the rim and being a pull-up shooter. What we should really take away is that he is this good as a pull-up shooter right now. And is he going to be 41% all year? I don't think so, and he has cooled down as of late. But if we're talking about 39% from deep Anthony Edwards on high volume, that's a crazy weapon to pair with the rim pressure that he has. And his scoring has scaled very well to the playoffs. Now, he has had some really good pull-up jump shooting runs, but he's also just improved as a pull-up shooter. And he's been effective getting to the mid-range. It's just so tough to guard a guy who can go through you like that, who can get by you like that, and who also can kill you with the pull-up jumper. So he's giving you 28, 6, and 5.5 on 60% true shooting in the playoffs. For his age, that's so impressive. And the other area where I do think he can really grow is I think he has the potential to become a pretty elite defensive guard. I think he is a really good on-ball defender right now. I think that he has lapses as an off-ball defender. So overall, I would just say he's a plus defender. But again, he's very young, and like you wouldn't expect him to be at his defensive peak. He has all the tools to be an elite defensive guard, I think, or at least pick his spots when he wants to be that sort of guy. The reason I don't have him higher, though, and Logan, I'll just put him in SGA conversations too, because this is a conversation that you and I had a bit ago. I don't think he'll ever be as good as SGA is right now. I don't think he'll ever be that level of scorer, even though he has this incredible downhill ability and he has the pull-up three-point shooting. SGA's mastery of every area on the floor, his diversity as a scorer, his ability to carve up the best defenses with mid-range shot making, it's just spectacular. But it's really the playmaking where I think Ant is lagging behind. And that's where, as a complete offensive engine, what SGA is doing right now is so special. I don't know that Ant is ever going to get there. And I don't think he's a finished product as a passer. But I also think this year has been discouraging. That, to me, is more concerning than anything else. If you talk about his shot selection, it's the fact that he hasn't gotten any better as a passer, and this offense really needs him to be. And I think we're at the point where it's like, you need to pair him with a lead playmaker if you want to have an elite offense with Anthony Edwards as your number one. And that's just not the case for SGA. He can do that all on his own. He's not an elite playmaker, but he's a good one. And he is just in such complete control of the game. It's a totally different level of maturity from Ant. And Ant is still maturing. It's important to keep his age in mind and that he does have room for growth. But I also think SGA is just a special, special player. And that's the thing. Everybody above Ant, in my opinion, is so special. I think Ant will be a top 5 player, but the guys above him are like either all-time great players, or I think are dudes who are top 3 players, who are truly elite offensive engines. And I believe in all those guys just a bit more than I do in Ant.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. We can start with the SGA thing. First, I can't say with confidence that Ant's ever going to be a better scorer than SGA just because I think SGA is one of the greatest scorers in basketball history.
Yeah.
It's not an anti-Ant thing. The second thing I will add is I've always known that Anthony Edwards was going to be an elite jump shooter. You watch the guy in practice, and that's what he practices all the time. Deep-ass three-pointers, pull-up middies, pull-up threes. That's what Ant's focal point has been practicing. Like, it just makes sense that he's going to get way better. And I think it's more encouraging than discouraging that you're seeing that he is capable of doing this. That being said, if we're starting from scratch, I am setting up Anthony Edwards for so much more success because the one thing I'll say, you're talking about apples to apples with SGA and Ant. SGA, I know it's not a great offensive situation and they've been down their second best player. It is a supreme offensive situation to Minnesota.
I don't know, man. If you put Ant in that offense, I think that they're in the 20s.
I think Ant can get to the rim. I think Ant's going to pass the ball to Hartenstein. I think Ant's going to move the ball and be willing to get it to these shooters. I think
Logan,
that Minnesota
the
is
Thunder
such
offense without SGA is a disaster. It's a disaster.
I'm just saying, I think the Minnesota offense is such a catastrophically bad situation for a guy like Ant that they are actively hindering him. And it makes me scared that long term, I think they are handicapping Ant by having him around Randall and Gobert. I think it hurts what he is capable of offensively, and I've always felt that way. And I think it's a fundamental misstep that they traded Cat, because I think when you're thinking about the ideal partner for Anthony Edwards, it's Cat. I mean, you have an all-time rim pressure in Anthony Edwards, and a guy that can space the floor at 7 foot better than almost anybody we've ever seen at that height, save, Dirk Nowitzki. Like, I think it's such a bad offensive situation, and if I could start from scratch, I'd build something better. Ant's number 4 for me.
Okay.
He is impossible to stay in front of. I think he's going to be an all-time rim pressure. I think he is a special pull-up jump shooter, and I think he's going to become a good playmaker. But Minnesota has to change this. You have to get rid of Julius Randle. And at this point, I know you're going to disagree, Carson, because it's a foundation that fuck Gobert. I don't care anymore, man. I think he hinders your offense so much. I know he's why the defense is great. It's like I would just much rather have a guy that Ant can get the ball to and that can run competent offense with. He is such a liability offensively that I don't even really care what he does with the defense. So I just think Ant's in one of the worst situations for a guy with his play style, and he would thrive in a lot of other ones, man. That's where I'm at. I love Anthony Edwards. I think he's going to be one of the best players on the planet one day. That's why he's number 4 for me.
I agree that it's a tough situation. What I think you're underselling is how monumentally great SGA is as an offensive player, and the fact that his situation without Chet offensively is not good.
But I mean, I just, like, here's my thing. There's not a lot of talent in bankable guys that can carry their own weight outside of J-Dub. There's space, though. When SGA drives the lane, there's 5 guys on the arc, and it's him able to drive in isolation.
That is often not true. That is often not true. Defenses will aggressively help off of those shooters. There are a lot of dudes who you want to test to make open threes, and sometimes they just don't. It's so special, Logan, to be the sort of intermediate shot maker that Shai is. Shai shoots 54% from mid-range on high volume. That's fucking freak shit, bro. That's all-time mid-range shot making.
That's why Shai
is completely lacking that dimension of his game, and he always has. The intermediate shot making, it's so important,
bro.
Especially in the playoffs.
He's got Randall and Gobert clogging the entire interior
up. The best way to succeed as a scorer, in spite of clogged lanes, is mid-range shot making. That's what SGA did against Dallas last year. Ant doesn't have that in his bag. We've seen stretches in the playoffs where he's good. He'll never be close to the mid-range shot maker, the intermediate shot maker that Shai is, and that's big.
I don't think SGA is ever going to be the pull-up three-point shooter that Anthony Edwards is.
I don't disagree with that.
And I don't think he's ever going to be the kind of elite rim pressure that Ant is.
I do disagree with that. He's consistently been a higher volume, more effective finisher at the rim.
I think that if Ant had clear lanes to drive in, you would recognize what an all-time defensive collapser he is. But he can't do that because he's got the French fucking
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not disagreeing with you. Look at Shai, though, man. I feel like you're just valuing like raw first step in power over Shai's more unique athleticism, which is still impossible to stay in front of. You can't stay in front of a dude who is the shiftiest player in basketball and who pirouettes around you at will.
SGA is higher than Ant for me.
Oh, you're cooking then. Okay.
I don't get why you're arguing this to me. I'm so confused.
Because I thought you would have Ant above SGA because of the conversation we had a couple weeks ago.
No, I'll spoil it to you. I have the Pillsbury Doughboy, Luka Doncic in my 5 spot.
Wow. All right. We had an imaginary argument then.
Yes,
so why
I know.
Is Luka at number 5? Look, man, I'm in full-on Shai defense mode. I love Shai.
I get it. SGA is way higher on this list, and I was wrong. I was wrong about that. And just to clean that up, I don't know if Ant is ever going to reach those levels of what SGA can do in the level that he's at, and that's why I do it. Now, Luka.
Can I say one more thing real quick?
Sure,
just a crazy number. The SGA offensive on-off, right? With him on the floor, they have an offensive rating over 120. With him off, they have an offensive rating of 104. Ant, I think the situation is bad. I think he'll be much better served later in his career in a better situation. But with him on the floor, it's an offensive rating under 113. With him off the floor, it's an offensive rating of 110. Like, I think he is being limited by the situation. I also think he limits an offense with his playmaking, specifically. That's really where, if you're going to be an offensive number 1, you have to be better than this as a passer.
I agree. I don't disagree with that. Again, the only thing that I'll add is I think Jason tweeted this out the other day, friend of the show. I think his front court is averaging 2.9 three-pointers made on 29%. It's like Anthony Edwards is also disincentivized to pass. It reminds me of like a Kobe, where Ant's at this point where he's like, I don't trust you with the basketball, so I would rather take the shot myself.
I totally agree. I think their offensive construction is really bad. I think everything with Minnesota's offense is bad.
I think it's broken.
I agree.
On the Luka point, because I think this is a really complicated issue, and I love Luka's game. I think he's one of the special offensive players that we've ever seen, and I think his value right now, what he has realized offensively, is greater than Anthony Edwards right now. That being said, I think that the biggest reason why he's not higher is because I worry about Luka's health and how he takes care of his body. The stuff last year, and also his play style, the heliocentric play style. That plays into my concerns about his injury, how ball dominant he is, how he, can wear himself down in the playoffs, and his injury history. But I also, with his style of play, you could honestly say that about Ant too. He needs the ball in his hands so much that it's never going to be like a seamless offense like a Jokic, right? You know what I mean? Yeah. It's never going to be like an easy. Jokic touches the ball all the time, but it doesn't stick, right? He's moving the ball. Luka is a guy way more in that mold of a James Harden. And we've seen it with Luka last year, going to the NBA Finals, putting the team on his back. And Kyrie deserves an immense amount of credit too, but when the chips were down, Luka said, I'm going to boss up, right? He said, hey, Gobert, step up on me, bro. I'm going to bang one in your mouth, and we're going to get out of here. Luka, I think, can clearly be the best offensive player on a title team, but the reason he isn't higher for me is... again, I worry about his injuries. I worry about his style of play. I worry about him taking care of his body. And defensively, I think he's the worst defensive player on my list, even worse than an Anthony Edwards. I just think, Ant can have his lapses too. Ant's not an elite defender by any means. Jokic, I've seen him engaged. I've seen him lock in. He's an elite rebounder. Luka, to me, there's just so many more clips of him. Even in the NBA Finals last year, it's just disheartening. It's half the game. And if you don't take that into the series, this is going to sound corny, but it's like if I hit a three on the wing on offense and then my man hits a three on the next possession, I didn't do anything. I completely negated all the good I did, and I think Luka can sometimes give back what he does offensively on the defensive end. And so all these guys are special, special players, but that's why Luka's at 5 for me.
I have Luka a couple spots higher. The debate that was so hard for me was Luka versus SGA, and I lost some sleep over this one. I ended up with Luka at 3 and SGA at 4. I have Giannis at 5.
Wow!
Yeah. The reason I have Giannis at 5, by the way, is basically just age and some of the injury stuff, but I was kind of comparing him to Jokic because they're basically the only dudes who I have who are this old and this high on my list because they're the two best players in basketball. But I do think Jokic is better in a vacuum. Jokic has also been more available. He's freakishly available, and I do think his game ages better over time because he's so much less dependent on athleticism, like infinitely less dependent on athleticism. So that's why Giannis ends up at number 5, but he's at that all-time great level right now where I'll take a few more years of him over more years of the guys I have below him. SGA versus Luka is so tough, dude, because SGA makes a strong case for being the best scorer alive. I mean, he's giving you 31 a night on 64% true shooting. What he's done since Chet went down is unfathomable. The Thunder are 20-3. He's averaging like 33.5 points per game on 66% true shooting. He can carve out an efficient shot for you every time down the floor because of his ability to score as a driver, where he's as effective as any guard in basketball, from the mid-range, where he's the most effective player in basketball, and now he's added this dimension of pull-up three-point shooting, and at the same time, he is a good passer, and he doesn't turn the ball over. He averages just 2.6 turnovers per game. I mentioned the huge difference in the Thunder offense with him on the floor compared to off it. Like, he has a lot of simple catch-and-shoot offensive players around him who really aren't consistently very good as catch-and-shooters. And Hartenstein, I do think, is a good offensive player, but he's a non-floor spacer and a non-vertical spacer. And yet, SGA is on the floor, and you play as an absolutely elite offense. And he's off the floor, and you look like the worst offense in basketball. That is so impressive. And at the same time, he's third in the league in steals, and he's tied for the most blocks by a guard. He is one of the more effective rim-protecting wings in basketball, and he is one of the better ball hawks in basketball. His ability to gamble and generate steals, and he's got such long arms. I mean, he's a really good part of a phenomenal team defense. So there's so much to love with him, and I think that he is the MVP of this season right now with how great he's been and how great the Thunder have been, even without Chet. And even though he is very ball dominant, I think he's still pretty easy to build an awesome team around because you can prioritize defensive personnel like this Thunder roster has done, and he can lift your offense as just this heliocentric monster, or you can prioritize offensive personnel, and the more spacing you give Shai and the more shooting you give him, well, he's just going to be even better, and he can still be a positive contributor defensively and can fill multiple roles there. So he's just an all-around monster. He's the most consistent superstar in basketball, not named Jokic or Giannis, and he's been very clearly the third best player in the NBA this season. The reason I still have Luka above him, I see that there are more pitfalls with Luka. You can have more questions about his attitude. You can have more questions about his health. I think that might feel a little bigger than it is right now because he's got the calf thing and because he was banged up in the playoffs last year. Luka has been pretty healthy overall, but he hasn't been quite as healthy as SGA. And you can maybe have some issues with his extremely ball-dominant heliocentric style, although SGA is pretty ball-dominant as well. The thing is, Luka is still an all-time offensive force, even up a level from SGA, because although I prefer SGA as a scorer, and I think his floor there as a scorer is a good bit higher, Luka is one of the all-time great playmakers. Like, his ability to diagnose whatever the defense is throwing at him and pick them apart as a passer is all-time special. His ability to make these skip passes, to make these kick-out passes, he's one of the best lob passers we've seen. I always think back to Luka's second year in the league, man, 2020, when he just had spot-up shooters and Dwight Powell as a rim runner, and he churned out what was, by pure offensive rating, the best offense we'd seen in the league. Like, that is the sort of dude we're talking about here. And he has gotten better since then because he has grown considerably as a pull-up shooter. He has gotten stronger. He has grown as a post-up player. He has grown as an off-ball player. It's still not a strength, but he's better there than he was several years ago when he also had no creators alongside him. And I just think, man, if you get Luka Doncic, who shoots as well as he did last regular season when he was one of the most efficient high-volume pull-up shooters in basketball. He struggled more in the playoffs. He was very inconsistent, but he has that pull-up jump shooting ceiling. You get that version of him offensively, and you get a guy who engages defensively. That is just a mega destructive all-time force, and I do think the offensive ceiling, because of that scoring and elite playmaking combo, it is just up a level from SGA, and I'm going to prefer the greater offensive player in this context to a guy who does have the two-way edge if Luka isn't as offensively bad as he was in the finals last year. And that's what concerns me about having Luka this high, because you can say, oh, well, it's the biggest stage of his career if he gets back there, right? He will be engaged defensively. And if he's engaged defensively, he's passable. Okay, he's not good, but a lot of players, if they engage, are passable. And he is big, and he does have good hands, and he is smart. But that's what puzzles me. It's like that was the biggest moment of his career. And I get that he was banged up. He was embarrassingly bad defensively. And yeah, he was being targeted by the best offense in terms of attacking mismatches and going at weak points in basketball, but also his effort, his focus was embarrassing defensively. I'm just banking on that not happening again. And maybe that's wrong. Maybe that's the wrong bet, but I'm banking on a healthier Luka, an older Luka, a smarter Luka, understanding that he has to at least be a functional part of a team defense. He has to at least be just below average instead of really, really bad. And if he gets there, I prefer his offensive edge to SGA's two-way edge. It's really, really close. But when I think about the best version of Luka in a playoff run, man, it's just nuclear. It's nuclear. It's unstoppable.
I'm surprised by this.
I'm almost surprised by it too, because I love SGA so much, but I don't want to overreact to Luka's worst moments, which is kind of what I feel like is happening right now. He's done a lot to stamp himself firmly in the top 3 players in basketball.
There's just been a lot of them. I'm just scarred a little bit, man. I'm scarred and I'm disappointed, and I kind of fall on the other side of where you're at. I think this is who Luka is, and unfortunately, I don't know if that changes. I don't want to take anything away from it because I agree with you, dude. Offensively, I think it's him. I think it's Jokic. I think those are the two guys that can
I think
be
he's
the
at a
best.
top 12 offensive peak we've seen. Last year, I thought was one of the best offensive seasons ever.
I don't know if he's ever going to be able to put it fully together, man. And SGA, I know what he's bringing me defensively. I know the versatility that SGA can bring me defensively alongside the defensive playmaking.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's a stud there, and he's never going to take a game off when I've seen Luka mentally check out. So yeah,
if SGA were like a Tatum-level defensive player, it wouldn't be close, right? I just think although SGA is a good defensive player, a lot of his value does still come with being off-ball. I don't think he's a particularly good on-ball defender. I think he's just solid there. And that's where it's like he's good at what he does, but a player at his position can only be so impactful defensively unless they're an absolute freak, which he's not. And that's where, again, if Luka tries defensively, I lean on his offensive edge. And if he never tries defensively, it's one of the great wastes of an NBA talent ever. And I just really hope that that's not the case because he's so unbelievably special offensively. There's so few dudes in NBA history who you can look at and say they are this level as both a scorer and a playmaker. He's just built to rip defenses apart. Built for it, even more than SGA, as much as I love him because the passing gap is big. I'm still going to bet on that. I am. Okay, so you go Ant at 4, Luka 5. Ant is tough. I mean, I love the guy, but I do think Luka is just in a different level because of how special he is offensively. Now we are into the top 3 where you have SGA, I have Luka, so we're into the top 2. And I'd be pretty surprised if we don't agree here.
We're not actually. I have SGA at 2. I have Jokic.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Whoa! Fire me up.
Well, the only reason
or intrigue me at the very least.
Well, the 3-year age difference to me, honestly, I think Jokic is so great, and his game is so like not predicated on athleticism that. Call me crazy, man. I wonder if Jokic could play like at this level for another, not at this level, but could give you another 5 to 6 years of something comparable to this, just because it's so not dependent on athleticism.
He could age like
I feel like better
Dirk
than
as an elite passer, but also even better because young Dirk was actually somewhat predicated on quickness. Strength ages so much better than any other athletic trait. Jokic is up there for the strongest player in basketball. I really don't see much of a fall off coming.
I mean, he's also going to have that old man vision and playmaking. He's already one of the best passers ever, man, but I feel like that even ages better with time.
I don't know if he can't get better as a passer. I'm not going to lie.
He's kind of the GOAT, yeah.
His arsenal should hold up very, very well.
So that was the dilemma that I was facing here. The only thing is, I know this is the thing with Jokic. I just don't know if he's going to – I wonder if Jokic is going to walk away from the game early. And that's the only thing that keeps him from being higher is I wonder if Jokic wins another title, if he – I don't know, next 5 years he just goes, all right, I got my ring, I got my MVPs, I did my thing, and I'm good. That's the only reason that he's at number 3 because I think Jokic is a better player than SGA. But I don't know. I just don't know if that fire is going to burn eternally for Jokic, and I wonder if 5 years from now, if he's like, you know what, I did it. I did it all. I'm ready to walk away. That's the only reason that he's not in my 2 spot is I just wonder if Jokic hangs it up a little prematurely.
It's interesting, and that has been raised as a point with Jokic over the years. The thing with Jokic in that discourse, in my opinion, is like he talks like, oh, it's not such a big deal.
I do feel
but
like he loves the game. I feel like he loves the game, though.
Just think about what he's doing this year, and to be fair, he should be putting more forward defensively if that were possible, but like he's also doing the greatest offensive carry job that we've seen in a regular season in NBA history. Look at how he responded against Minnesota last year, even not to win, but just look at the effort he played with. Look at him playing 47 minutes in Game 7, right? I do think when it comes down to the big moments, Jokic has shown how much he cares and the level of competitor that he is. Look at how much he did engage defensively in the 2023 playoff run, right, where he got the most out of his physical abilities in that run, in my opinion. In the finals, thought that he was very, very solid defensively. That's why I'm not going to put too much stock into the idea that he's going to walk away from the game early. Because when I think about how games age, I mean, yeah, he literally might be the best equipped superstar to still be dominating in his mid-30s that we've seen. There's nothing about IQ. There's nothing about touch. There's nothing about strength. There's nothing about size. There's nothing about shooting ability that goes away or gets any worse, noticeably worse, with age. Strength a little bit, but like way less than any of the other athletic traits. For some guys, strength gets better. And Jokic is still 29 years old, and he's the greatest offensive force the game has ever seen. He's averaging 31, 13, and 10 on 65% true shooting. Denver, as a team, is more than 25 points per 100 possessions better with him on the floor. And the thing is, if we're talking about building from scratch, right, if we're talking about who do I want as the foundation of my franchise, that's where Jokic is the easiest player to build a dominant offense around in NBA history. I mean, just offensively this year, I can't believe these numbers are still holding up, but they are. They have a 128 offensive rating with him and a 98 offensive rating without him, man. It's by far the best offense ever versus by far the worst offense in the league when he's off. If you take any of these other key players off the floor, here's the Nuggets offensive rating with Jokic on the floor and Jamal Murray off. 123.9. That would be the best offense ever. Michael Porter Jr. off, Jokic on. 118.6. So that's still a number 4 offense in basketball. With Jokic on, Aaron Gordon off, they have a 130.9 offensive rating. There's just no precedent. There's no comparison when it comes to his ability to amplify everybody around him offensively and elevate any group. Look at what he did in 2022 with basically a bench group out there without Jamal Murray, without Michael Porter Jr., still making that an elite offense. Look at what he's done with Russell Westbrook this year, tapping into all of the best possible traits that Russ has, maximizing their two-man game.
He did the impossible, bro. Never thought I'd see the day.
Dude. And I don't want to sell Russ short because there's also so much about Russ's game that works so well with Jokic, putting an athlete like that around Jokic as a cutter, putting a passer like that with him in the two-man game. Like, they just have beautiful complementary skill sets, and I'm actually working on a YouTube video about Russ's revival in their two-man game right now because it's been so fun, and I couldn't help but think, like, man, you put Russell Westbrook with Nikola Jokic his entire career, I think we view him as a completely different player.
You're winning. How many titles, bro?
It would be unstoppable, and it would also be the only pairing in NBA history that I can think of that would get the best version of Russ, that would
Completely
trim out the
agree.
bad stuff and maximize the good stuff. And that's what we're seeing right now. And it just so happens to be a 35-year-old Russ. But man, is he playing the best that he has in years. He's the greatest offensive talent and floor raiser that we've seen, Nikola Jokic is. And now, this year, just for funsies, he's averaging 1.33 points per jumper, and we're almost halfway into the season. So he's been a 98th percentile jump shooter on top of being the most unstoppable post scorer and this unstoppable touch shot maker and the best passer in the sport. It's just incredible. So that's the thing. I think you could put so many different groups around him, right? You say, oh, well, Aaron Gordon is such a good compliment because of how good he is in the dunker spot. Okay, but is that an irreplaceable skill set? Clearly not. They've been a better offense without Aaron Gordon. Really, they're prioritizing defense, what they get from him defensively than what they get from him offensively. MPJ is an awesome, awesome spot-up shooter. Yeah, that's a great fit alongside Jokic, but, I mean, there's other great spot-up shooters out there. Jamal Murray, we've thought of as this awesome pick-and-roll partner for him, but are there not 10-plus guards in the league who would be even better, who would look even better alongside Jokic? Like, that's the thing. I have given credit to the Nuggets for putting really good fits around him because I think the two-man game with Jamal is so great and the sort of off-ball talents that they've put alongside him, especially when you're talking about the title team and you still had a real floor spacer at the 2 in KCP. Like, it was a nicely built team, but at the end of the day, it's Jokic, man. It's Jokic that makes that a great offense. It's Jokic that could make so many different combinations of personnel great because of his ability to physically impose himself, because of his ability to dominate off the ball as a scorer when he wants to, because of his ability to pick you apart as a playmaker with these quick touches. Like, just the best offensive player ever. And we know that when he's engaged, he can be a solid contributor in a very good team defense. I've never been somebody who has said that Jokic is a good defender. I've never been somebody certainly who has said that he's an elite defender, as I know some people have because of these shitty metrics like defensive box plus minus that just are terrible. And if you look at their formula, it's a joke. But I do think that he brings positive value in areas because he's an otherworldly defensive rebounder and he's so smart and his hands are so good. So it's like he's able to cover up for the fact that he's a very limited athlete and a bad rim protecting center better than any other center in basketball could. And that makes him a fine defensive player who you can put a really good team defense around with him as a solid cog in the machine. And at the same time, you can sacrifice a little bit on offensive personnel and know that you're still going to be an amazing offense because you have Jokic. I mean, look at what he's done with Peyton Watson out there starting, right? Like, it's just a testament to how easy it is to build an amazing team around the guy. He still hasn't ever played with an all-star. And he's produced these incredible results year over year.
The greatest offensive player ever, man.
He is. I love Shai, but a 3-year age gap does not make up to the difference, in my opinion, that we're talking about the greatest offensive force ever and a top 8 peak in NBA history with Jokic and the greatest offensive floor-raising job that we've ever seen. I'll just take a few years of that over longer periods from anybody else in the league except for one absolute freak who is not only much younger than Jokic, but is the only guy in the league who I actually think can be better and I expect to be better, and that guy's in a tier of his own. But Shai, as much as I love him, he's not at that level as an individual force. The difference between them right now is too big for me to have Shai higher.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's the best guard in basketball. I think SGA is going to break through and could win a title this year, man. I think it's very possible.
I mean, that was my pick before the year. We just got to see Chet back out there, man. We got to see how much Chet helps things offensively, but I couldn't be more optimistic about OKC big picture or Shai. I love Shai very much.
And, I mean, number one, the expectation is he's going to be the greatest player of all time.
Is that your expectation?
I mean, you look back at the last guy, and it was LeBron, and he was the chosen one, and he was crowned as... that's what's so remarkable to me about LeBron's career is he came in and everybody said this guy's going to be the greatest player ever. And if LeBron didn't live up to that, he would have been disappointing. Wemby's expectation is he's going to be the greatest player ever. And if he doesn't live up to that, somehow it's a disappointment. But I do. I mean, you're getting otherworldly defensive value. That's where you can start with Wemby, right? He can just do things defensively that nobody else can do. He can block shots and make recoveries. And also, too, I don't know if Wemby's full defensive value pops up because it's like some guys won't even drive on him. Like some guys will just not take shots. They'll just stay away from the paint because Wemby is such a good deterrent. I think he needs to get more polished on that end. Like with the technical things, like we were talking about with Chet and Mobley, like I think there's some technical cleaning up to do with Wemby, but it's one-of-one traits that he has.
Yeah.
And I think he's going to be the greatest defensive playmaker and greatest defensive player ever. When you have physical tools like that, that's my expectation. And then offensively, he can just do stuff with a certain ease that nobody else can. What are the two most valuable shots in basketball today? An open three-pointer and a shot at the rim. Okay, well, you've seen what Chris Paul's been able to do with him this year, throwing lobs off the backboard, throwing all kind of lobs everywhere. And Wemby's an elite play finisher. And then this year, what he's been doing shooting behind the arc, you see the glimpses of him being one of the greatest shooting big men of all time. It's like, and then I just see Wemby rounding out the parts of his game where there aren't any holes. Him becoming a special playmaker, right, with the defensive attention he's going to draw. Him getting better at going on the low block and developing a post bag. To me, that's really when I think Wemby is going to become unstoppable. Because, again, he can get those shots at the rim at will when he wants to, because he's so freakish. And you can just throw the ball anywhere up in the square and he can finish it. And he can shoot over everybody. Once Wemby can develop that, inside the arc, that back to the basket, turnarounds, hooks, whatever, that's when I think he's going to be fully complete and he's going to be really unstoppable. Yeah, so I mean, that's my expectation. I think Wemby's going to be the greatest player of all time. And
Wow.
I don't think you can have anybody else at number one. I would hear an argument for Jokic, I think, but I think Wemby, has to be here.
It's a really hard argument to make, man, when I'm just getting another 8+ years of Wemby. Guy turns 21 years old tomorrow, man, and he's averaging 26, 10, and 4 with 4 blocks per game on 61% true shooting. And the offensive growth that we've seen from him is just terrifying. You mentioned the two most valuable shots. He's almost 77% in the restricted area this year. That's absurd. There's nobody who finishing around the rim is easier for than the 7'4" fluid mover with an 8-foot wingspan. And he's almost 36% from 3. He's an elite pick and roll finisher at the rim and as a popper. He's an elite transition big, just glides down the court in the full court. And he already has that top tier superstar impact. The Spurs are 14 points per 100 possessions better with him on the floor. Out of these elite guys, the only dudes who are surpassing that number are SGA and Jokic this year. It's ridiculous how impactful he is. And his floor for the next decade is best defensive player on the planet. As much as I love Chet and Mobley, I just think the more that Wemby grows, the bigger the gap between those guys can become. I mean, grows, not literally. That would be fucking freakish. I'm talking about in terms of his understanding of the game. The physical tools there, it just cannot be rivaled by anybody. Can't be rivaled by anybody in NBA history. And it's not just the height and the length. It's also the ability to guard very capably in space, especially for a 7'4" freak. So yeah, I do think he's going to be the best defensive player on the planet, maybe by a good bit. Maybe the best defensive player we've seen since Bill Russell. Maybe the best defensive player ever, period. And then offensively, he'll be able to walk into an efficient 25 plus a night because his physical advantages are so overwhelming, and he can also shoot 35+% from 3 on high volume. That's just so much guaranteed production and guaranteed value every night. And then on top of that, he can continue to develop. He will get stronger. And I think as he does get stronger, that's when you're talking about a guy who could literally be the best player ever. Because if he can start going through people as a driver, if he can start posting up more comfortably and move defensive players and doesn't get pushed off his spots by guys with a lower center of gravity, that's just completely unstoppable. He'll probably get a tighter handle. It's tough at 7'4", but hey, he'll continue to work on that. He'll continue to try to improve that. He will get better as a passer. He's already a very good passer for his age and position, but I do think he'll continue to grow there. And then when the situation around him gets better, he's just going to continue to blossom, man. When he plays with an actual elite guard, this is what I've been saying since he was a rookie, man. If you put him with a Trae Young, you put him with a real advantage creator and an elite playmaker, his offense is going to be so disgustingly easy, so disgustingly efficient. When you're manufacturing those lobs for a 7'4" guy, or you're manufacturing those open pick and pop threes for a 7'4" guy who shoots like Wemby, it's just unconscious. It's
Not only
unconscious.
that, too, I think Wemby's going to amplify the guard that he plays with, too.
Of course. Oh, of course. Of course. But I'm just thinking in terms of his individual production and efficiency, it's going to keep getting better from here. Everything's going to keep getting better. So I ask you, do you honestly think he's going to be the best player ever? What I would say right now is I think we're looking at a future top 4 player in NBA history. I think we're looking at a guy who is going to be up there with LeBron and Michael Jordan and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar on the Mount Rushmore in NBA history. At this point, he's just still too young for me to say definitively if he's going to surpass LeBron or MJ. There's just too much left, right? Too much basketball development left. He has physical tools like we've never seen, but those dudes are the pinnacle of the sport, and I'm not going to rush to say that anybody is going to unseat them. And Kareem was the best player in basketball for, 11 years? Like, he is also firmly in that top 3 tier. Everybody after that, I just think there's too much overwhelming two-way ability for me to expect anything less. Like, we were talking about our greatest peaks, right? Akeem, Shaq, Jokic, all these other great bigs are up there. Wilt, Bill Russell. There's a lot of centers actually specifically in that range. I think that Wemby has an ability to reach a two-way level that none of those guys did. And he's already reaching that level so fast. I mean, he's so good as a second-year player. He's one of the best second-year players that we've ever seen. Sky's the limit, man. There is no limit. There literally is no limit for Wemby, and I'm expecting nothing short of a tier 1 player in NBA history. And yeah, I don't think you can argue anybody else is the dude you would want to start your franchise with.
I mean, the final component is the exponential growth that you're talking about, how he's just continued to spike and take leap after leap, right? Like, 5 months into the basketball season last year, he took a leap. This year, he's taken another leap. It's like
sooner than that. He took a leap 2 months into the year. I mean, once he moved to center last year,
December,
he got so much
you're
better.
right.
And then he kept getting better and better. And this year, he started slow. And then all of a sudden, he's playing like an undeniable top 8 player, first-team All-NBA player. I totally agree. There's just so much to grow into, and we've seen it happen so fast. Like, exponential growth is the standard with this dude. It is.
And I can't wait, because I think the second that the Spurs, make that commitment to put a real contender around him, I think the Spurs are there, and they're going to be a problem.
Oh, my God. Yeah. It's insane what he's already doing, dude. I didn't think that he could have this team in playoff conversations as incredible as we all know that he is, and that's what he's doing this year. Shall we talk about honorable mentions, Logan? Who were the toughest cuts for you from this list?
I asked you before the show started if you thought this was ridiculous. I did consider having your boy Amen Thompson on here, just because that dude's he might be the greatest athlete I've ever seen. That guy's
Best
a
athlete
freak.
in the league today. Yeah,
that guy is a freak, dude. He can just do stuff that I've never seen anybody else do. He's going to be a defensive monster. He's a good passer, and he can do stuff off ball. It's just the scoring element of his game isn't there yet. Truth be told, even though he is older, I really did consider Steph Curry. And the reason I considered Steph was we're talking about Jokic's game aging gracefully. I think Steph is another one of those guys who, even when he gets older, is going to have an immense level of impact. And I don't think he's going to be a guy who's able to be a number 1 anymore. I wonder if he's still there now. But Steph, I think, could be like a great number 2 on a championship-winning team. I mean, it's just the gravity that he has, the defensive attention that he has, the playmaking. Like, I think Steph's a better passer than he's ever been at this stage in his career, right? Like, he doesn't have a ton of ball left, and he's not going to pressure the rim or turn back the clock athletically, but, like, those are unalienable things that I think are going to age really gracefully with Steph's game. And so I did consider him. A few other guys, I did consider Trae Young, but, like, when I'm looking at like him versus a Jalen Brunson or something like that, I'd much prefer Jalen Brunson's game. I just think he's more efficient. Trae's a one-man offense, but he's just more inefficient than him, and I feel like it's tougher for him to manufacture great looks. And then the last couple of guys I'll give a shout to. I don't know if any of these names seem crazy. You tell me if I'm off my rocker right now, Carson.
I will.
I thought about Brandon Miller because I think Brandon Miller is going to be really good. I thought about J-Dub, Jalen Williams, just because I think J-Dub's going to be really good. And this is probably my hottest one. With what he was doing this year, I really thought about Jaden Ivey.
Oh my!
I don't know, man. I think
We gotta
Jaden
get a
Ivey's.
seatbelt on you, buddy.
I've always liked Jaden Ivey,
You have.
and it sucks, man, because he broke his freaking leg, and that
know.
shit breaks my heart because that's such a hard injury to bounce back
You
from.
think Jaden Ivey is a better building block than Cade?
Yeah, I do.
Whoa! Wow.
I just think the way Jaden can get to the rim. Don't get me wrong. Jaden's way more raw right now. He's got to take, because Cade's so much better than him right now. Like, I think Jaden would have to take an exponential leap over the next 3 years, and obviously this injury hinders it, so we'll see what he looks like when he comes back. But I wouldn't rule it out, man. I think Jaden's going to be a stud, dude. He's such an athletic freak, and the jumper was on this year, and you saw some of the playmaking. He's just got that rare combination, man, of athleticism and rim pressure and shooting as well. Excuse me. I like Jaden Ivey a lot.
I like Jaden Ivey a lot too. I just think Cade, man, the size, the playmaking, the defensive tools, emphasis on the playmaking. There's such a massive gap there to me. It's no question that Cade is their best asset. But I would shout out some of the guys you mentioned too. Steph, just too old, man. Just way too old and already declining. I'm not going to consider a 36-year-old who, honestly, I do have some concerns about right now. I also consider J-Dub. He was one of my toughest cuts. I think he's such a great all-around player. I also really considered Franz.
It's unfair, man, the Thunder.
It is unfair, but also look at the Magic. I mean, the Magic have two of my top 15 guys for sure. I think that they're going to be such a great wing duo, and Franz is just this sort of versatile, do-it-all winning wing that you absolutely want. The other guys who I really considered were Donovan Mitchell, Jalen Brunson, who you had on there, and Devin Booker. I mean, they're all these 28-year-old guards who I think are phenomenal offensively. I think that Brunson is my favorite. I think he's such a great floor raiser with his scoring arsenal, his on-ball versatility, and his playmaking. But I think that Mitchell, we've seen the ceiling that he can explode to. And Book, I just think, is such an incredible offensive complement to basically any other lead player you could put him alongside, or really just in about any offense. I know he's having a rough year, but I believe in him. But ultimately, it was pretty easy for me to land on Mobley and Paolo for my last couple spots because I think their ceilings are so high, and also they're so much younger than those other guys who I was mentioning, the guys who are better right now. Last dude who I considered even for a split second was Anthony Davis, but he's too old. But he is the guy in that like superstar now tier who I considered, because KD too old, Steph too old and regressing. But I would rather have an extra decade of Evan Mobley or Paolo Banchero than I would whatever we have left of Anthony Davis pretty easily. So that was a pretty easy call for me. This was a lot of fun, man. I really enjoyed this. 2025, we're looking to the future. The future is bright for the NBA. Cooper Flag also, who knows where he would rank among these guys. I think Cooper is one of the best prospects we've seen in a long while.
Before we get out of here, Carson,
yes,
I want to ask you about some of the guys that other people may have considered for this list.
Okay.
I just want to ask, like, where do you fall down on a guy like Jaren Jackson Jr.?
Ooh, Triple J is interesting. I very briefly considered him because I do think he has been awesome this year. I mean, I have never enjoyed him more with his growth offensively, with just his assertiveness, his comfort handling, his touch has been so good this year. I would consider him. To me, it's just like I think that Mobley is better defensively, and I think that Mobley can be at least what Triple J is offensively right now. I don't think that he'll be quite the scorer that Triple J is, but he's so much better as a passer. Triple J is a really, really bad passer. For me, Mobley is pretty easily clear, and he's a couple years younger. But shout out Triple J. He belongs on the outskirts of this conversation.
Another guy I feel like people would point to, Alperen Sengun. What do you think about Sengun?
Yeah, man. You know, I've been really impressed by Sengun. I know you say his name is pronounced Schengen. I don't know. I just don't know how I feel about that. I need to do the
Sengun's
research.
cooler, objectively.
It is cooler. And that's how I've always heard it pronounced.
Dude,
the
we
thing
have
with
Saboner and
Alfie,
Senguner.
Yeah, true. The thing with Alpi, as I call him because we're friends, although he has improved defensively, he's still just not my favorite offensive player. He's super skilled. The post game is sexual to watch. The passing is sexual to watch. But because of his lack of floor spacing, because of his touch issues, because he's not actually an efficient finisher or mid-range shot maker, like he's just an inefficient scorer. He's under 55% true shooting this year. So he's not an impressive enough offensive player for me to consider him over a two-way force like a Mobley or a guy with the offensive ceiling of a Paolo.
All right, and then the last crop of guys that I feel like people might consider a Ja Morant, a LaMelo Ball, Tyrese Maxey.
All of them, I'm just pretty easily going to prefer Mobley's two-way skill set. I just think it's, frankly, a lot rarer, and it's so impactful to have a dude who's going to make you an elite defense and then can be a good offensive player. Whereas LaMelo, Ja, those guys are really good playmakers, but they cannot individually lead you on their own to being a good offense. Maxey is a tier below that in terms of what he can do for you on his own because he's not on that same level as a playmaker. So, again, Mobley pretty easily clear for me of all those guys.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with all those two, but
you gave a voice to the people, man.
I mean, I know there's a lot of people that I know a lot of those guys would probably be on people's, either in the top 10 or right outside.
Yeah. Also, by the way, check out this vintage Cavs drip
so
that I got
hard.
on.
So hard, man.
I'm telling you, bro, 2025 is the year of the vintage NBA drip. And I'm classing my wardrobe up all around. I'm going to be wearing pants. I'm going to be wearing shirts.
All right. I don't think y'all realize how much Carson wearing pants is a big deal, dude. I think the how long do we live together? 2 years?
Yeah, year and a half, I think.
I saw you wear pants once.
And it was to my funeral.
I really can't remember what it was, but you wore pants once, dude.
That was Arizona. But also, I don't know why I'm acting like it's any different here. It's incredibly rare that I wear pants. But look, man, we're classing it up in 2025. Dress well to test well, as my buddy Rex Peters always says. Big ups. All right, guys. Appreciate you tuning in. Hope you enjoyed this one. Hope your new year is off to a wonderful start. How much longer can we say Happy New Year for, Logan?
Whole year?
Nope. That's the wrong answer. I'm going to say a few more days. I think you get a week. I think you get the opening week, and then we'll stop.
I think it's already kind of played out. It's already kind of annoying.
I'll just go fuck myself then. Take back that Happy New Year. I hope you, Logan Camden, have a miserable New Year. And I hope everybody who enjoys our show continues watching it and enjoying it. If you want more of our stuff, all of our full shows are on YouTube, and we also have our video essays, video breakdowns. As I mentioned, I'm working on one on Russell Westbrook's resurgence right now. May do something on Jokic Wemby. No promises, because I'm busy. But I'm just so excited to watch those matchups. But that's all on our YouTube channel. And you can listen to the show across all audio platforms. You can also see all of our trivia content across social media, TikTok, Instagram, at NerdSesh, Twitter, at Nerd_Sesh. We've also got graphics from the show whenever we do a ranking like this one. We get a fun list graphic out there, and everybody gets really mad at us, and that's great. Especially when we have Theo on the show and he has Baker Mayfield as his number 23 quarterback in the NFL. So stay tuned in for that. And if you want, you can join our Discord. The link to that is at the link tree across our social media bios to just hang with the gang, talk some ball. And you can check out our merch. The link to that is at the link tree as well. And it is at breakingtea.com. So with that, as always, appreciate you guys. I've been Carson Brabber.
I've been Logan Camden.
And this was NerdSesh.